Martin, I'm an addict. That's it. Get my water. Well, it is really nice to be here. I've had to do quite a bit of controlling in the last half an hour to get the vibes right in here. It was... the banquet had a bit of a feel flat factor to it, which calmed me down so much that I was starting to fall asleep. I mean, I am nervous, but I'm confident. It's quite nice to have that mixture of fear and confidence and walkie-talkies going on. And really what I'm going to share tonight, I don't really know. I've just been outside, I've looked at the sea. I'm feeling quite good at the moment. My self-esteem's quite good. I feel a lot of love that I've felt here. I'm feeling really good at the moment. I've come through a very long patch of a lot of difficulties, which I'll share with later when I get in touch with what's really going on inside of me. I was a little worried about this after-dinner speaker because, there's a kind of fine line between sort of entertaining and sharing experience, strength and hope, which is really all I've got to share. I'm not an entertainer, but so I won't entertain. But somebody said to me a long time ago that the longest journey you'll ever have to make is between your head and your heart. And I would like to share that experience of my journey from when I stepped into the fellowship to where I am now. It normally takes me, I can't normally share for 10 minutes or 15 minutes because it's all cerebral. And the stuff in my head is a mixture of sort of truth and lies, which is where my illness lives. I kind of hope and I trust God will open me up and I will slowly make the transition between head and heart as I'm sharing. I was listening this afternoon to Mick and Johnny share, and I could feel as they went from the head to the heart. It was I nearly cried twice when both of them kind of connected, and I'm very sensitive to that sort of stuff. I like the right vibes and ambiance, and I like things just so. I don't want to be too flippant either and too entertaining because really I've got to remember this is life and death stuff, you know. I was here 9 years ago at the first UK convention, and I was about 15 months clean. And obviously I knew everything then, so things were a lot easier. I'm not going to talk much about my using. I mean, I used from about the age of 16, 17 till I found recovery when I was 34. I never intended to end up in the places that I ended up, and I did the stuff that most people here have done. I mean, nobody that I know in NA is here because their life was so wonderful. Magic started to happen for me when I found NA. So what I think I focus on is maybe the last year of my using. It's very important for me, and that transition into NA. I've read lots of bits and pieces of different things, and I was thinking today that that Chinese thing, Lao Tse thing of a journey of 10,000 miles starts with the first step, and that my first step really changed when I opened that door, or someone opened that door to me in an NA meeting, my first NA meeting. I mean, it was touch and go for me. The year before, I thought I was a fairly glamorous type of lifestyle that I led. You know, my sort of role models were sort of fictitious mafiosi characters, and I did quite a lot of comfortable, if that's the word, using in nice places and nice hotels and that sort of madness. But really, the last 7 years of my using, things just fell apart. My first wife left me when I made the transition from, I knew that cocaine and alcohol were a problem for me, or I knew they were a problem for the people around me. And I made a conscious decision to switch to opiates. And the last time I saw my wife was, I went home. I said, there's some people want to kill me. I got undressed, and I put a hand grenade on the side of the table that someone had given me because I was very paranoid. And the next morning she went. It took me 3 weeks to realize she'd gone. And I kind of thought people fell out of my life because they had no stamina. You know, I didn't really think it had much to do with my behavior. I just kind of thought, well, you know, they really couldn't hack it. And I switched to opiates, and things got worried. I manipulated another woman to get divorced, and kind of, she got a bit of a settlement, and we went to live in the country. I'd always lived in London, and we went to this very picturesque Oxfordshire village. It was the sort of thing that, you know, when maybe you're a kid you dream about, or, you know, with a little thatched roof. And within 3 months of being in this village, the village got a deputation together, led by a very strong woman called Mrs. Farquhar, with a Wellington boot and a barber coat, and all the villagers standing behind her, and they knocked on our door and said, we don't want you in this village. And I reacted in the usual manner. I said to the woman I was living with, right, that's it, pack the bags. We picked the kids up from school, threw the keys to the estate agent, and we came back to London. I mean, I was in London every other day anyway, scoring, so it was a relief. But what I didn't realise was that my problem followed me around. I just kept thinking, and I said to my mother, God rest her soul, you know, every New Year's Eve I used to say, look, next year things will get better. I'm just on a bad run at the moment. I never associated that my using had anything to do with the bad luck. I always thought they were separate things. And it kind of got worse. I mean, it got worse for me. I was in and out of institutions, and I was in this lockup in South London, which was kind of a locked ward, and it had a wonderful reputation for being sort of end of the line type of place. And there was a keyhole to the locked ward, and they'd even glued that up because they caught somebody with a straw through the keyhole from a visitor into a bag of powders. So the unit was tight, and there was lots of sort of therapeutic stuff going on. There was a men's dormitory at one end, there was the women's dormitory at the other end, and there was the medication room, which you queued at 3 times a day to get your particular detox of choice. And what we used to do in the mornings was they used to try and watch you swallow it, but we all used to keep people on a barbiturate withdrawal used to have pentobarb, and people on opiate had their stuff, and people on a Valium withdrawal, and we all kept stuff in the corner of our mouths, and then we all used to wheel and deal in the TV room and kind of spit them out and mix them up and have a few cocktails. And so, I mean, that's the only kind of treatment I ever had. Really and truly,
it got to the last point. I mean, I've been in this place a few times, a bit like, you know, Billy the Kid. I'd gone in, I'd surrendered, hands up, but I couldn't give my guns in. You know, I would keep a syringe in my shoes. I'd walk in and they'd say, well, this one's dead, that one's dead. This place you used to be able to get Largactil on request. If you were feeling a bit hyper or you were kind of, you know, you could have some Largactil. I was the sort of addict that would really try anything. In fact, the woman that I was with in the country, her father was a doctor. And I rifled through his bag one night or one day and got these ampules of Largactil. And she was an addict because I mainlined this Largactil and sort of shriveled into a prune in a corner, and all I could hear her screaming was, it's my turn, you promised to... So stable relationships I wasn't very good at picking people that were very good for me. Anyway, it's enough about my using. I mean, basically last year in my using, I really ended up in a very sad state. My mother died after, who was the kind of last one, the last enabler, the last one who said, you know, my son can do no wrong. You always pick the wrong women. You always pick the wrong, you know. And I was in dead trouble. I mean, it was around about Christmas, 1984, and I'd run out of ideas. I'd always had a little clue or a little coup or another woman I'd always had a move. But I got to the point where I ran out of moves. There was no script left at all for me. It was the end of the book, and I was walking the streets and no fixed abode and feeling very sorry for myself, and some strange things started to happen. They couldn't take me into this detox because I was waiting for an inquest and post-mortem on my mother. And so I had to spend about 4 or 5 days sort of on the streets. Really a very pathetic character, you know. You couldn't even be bothered to go, and I begged them at the police station to lock me up, and they said, well, look, you've got to go out, go down the road, smash the window somewhere, and we'll lock you up for the night. But it was kind of like that. It was real pitiful stuff. And God started to work in my life somehow. There was no way back. I mean, I was so low that I honestly believed that, I mean, I didn't know really I'd never met a recovering addict. That was half my arguments with all these doctors and what have you. You know, just show me someone who's getting well. You know, just show me, bring me one addict. And the last time I was taken into this institution and they threw me out for using. And I said, but I haven't used. There was this big panel of professor and I said, I haven't used. And they said, well, you know, I had Valium, I had other bits and pieces in my system. And like Johnny was sharing today, I mean, I was sticking to my opiate withdrawal, and they said, well, you're going to have to go. And I said, well, look, if you send me out of here now, I'll kill myself. I've got nowhere to go I'll walk out of these gates and it's finished. Being an addict, I'd obviously had some kind of contingency came out of somewhere. I manipulated the nurse in there, who was a very caring and lovely, enthusiastic young worker trying to help addicts. I mean, and she was clueless. You know, she was in like with some heavy duty manipulating addicts. And she was kind of, a bit of a Florence Nightingale. I mean, thank God she was there. In fact, on my birthday, I was 34, she brought me in a lump of hash. This is to a drug dependency lockup unit. So I'd manipulated her because now and again, if the sister was off duty, she had the keys to the cabinet as well. And anyway, they said, you've got to leave. And there was a sister there, a very nice Scottish woman, who we all hated because she was the only one that was professional enough to run that unit properly. But she knew something had changed for me. She knew my history. She knew my mother had just died. She knew there was nowhere left for me. She'd seen me 5 or 6 times before. And she said, Martin, look, all I can tell you is go to the people that love you. And I said, yeah, well, that's very handy, but, there's nobody really springs to mind, So... but I've remembered what she said, and they threw me out, and this nurse said, look, you can come and stay at my place tonight. What happened then was that I'd vaguely heard about this organisation called Narcotics Anonymous. Obviously, being a using addict, I knew everything about Narcotics Anonymous, and thought it wasn't really for me. But then things started to happen. I was in touch with a very old friend of mine just before I went into this clinic, who was some whiz kid accountant, and he was having an affair with this New York porno star. And he was flying backwards and forwards from New York to here, and she told him about Narcotics Anonymous, and he said, Martin, I need you, when you come out, you phone me, and I want you to go to a meeting of these people. And I found out where it was, and really my life started all over again. I mean, when I was in prison when I was 32, I was kind of, it was the first time I'd been in prison, and if you make it to 32 without going to prison, you kind of, it was mainly full of youngsters, apart from probably Mick, and but I was mainly full of youngsters when I was there, and I kind of thought I was really the bee's knees. I'd sit in my cell, done everything, been everywhere, lived a full life, astral projected at night, I didn't worry about that sort of stuff. Went to New York in my head, and I believed it, I kind of... but I would never have lived if I hadn't have found recovery. I would never... The whole stuff pales into insignificance now. My whole, like I heard this afternoon, my using story went on for hours when I first came into NA. But then things started to happen. I'm going to get into recovery. I'm sick of using. I was very arrogant. Like most addicts, I knew everything, and I had a vast amount of self-pity. I went to a few meetings and kind of... Well, no, in the first meeting, I was very fortunate because I think a day earlier might have been too early, and a day later may have been too late. I knew I'd found everything I was ever going to need the rest of my life in that meeting. But then there was practical problems. I was homeless, I had no money, I had no clothes, I had, I was at the bottom, and people said go to plenty of meetings, and I started to go to meetings, and I heard about this higher power, and things started to happen, and I had a little series that I'll just share with you. Some of my early recovery miracles happened, and they were quite unbelievable. On a Sunday, I was waiting. There was only one meeting on a Sunday afternoon, and I was starving, I had no cigarettes, and the meeting didn't start till 3 in the afternoon, and I went to this telephone box, and my pride, I was going to phone someone to ask them if they'd lend me a couple of pound, and I picked up the phone, and this money started pouring out, and it just kept pouring and pouring out on the floor, and I was trying to stop it, and it was like everywhere. The whole phone box emptied. And I was looking around to see if people thought I was vandalizing it, and so I had a good breakfast that day, I had my cigarettes, I had enough for the next day, and obviously went back to the phone box the next day and the day after, but kind of nothing else happened. And then I was in this hovel, a bed and breakfast place, and I'd been down to get my dole check, and they said, well, look, you know, there's a problem, and they warned me in the morning, if I don't pay the rent, if I do not pay the rent, I'm on the streets. And I came back, and I'd been going to meetings a while, and I heard, you know, I really embraced the God, higher power, step 3 and step 2 concept, and thought, well, I'll give it a try. But I came back, I was, you know, pretty demoralized. They said, you defrauded us 6 months ago, you're not getting your thing, your papers are not right, all that stuff. And I crept in back to my room, and there was this, there was a strange woman I'd met at breakfast. All she said is, you're a Pisces and you're going through a spiritual experience. It went off, and then I went out all day and kind of hustled and came back with no money. And I went back to my room, and it was full of these little notes saying the power of a meeting's all you need, and you know, and I was writing these things, and this nurse will wait for me, and kind of, you know, pretty desperate stuff. But I knew that NA was the key, but I was already, suppose, trying to run it all. And sat on my bed, I crept in, I thought, well, this is it. They're going to come up in a minute and throw me out. And there was this note under the door, and it was like there was a lot of energy coming off of this. Something attracted me. And I went over to the door, and I picked it up, and I read it, and it's a note from this woman. It said, if you want to talk, come and knock on my door. Here's my room number. So I kind of, you know, I was open. When you run out of ideas, it's amazing how open-minded one becomes. I was very open. I'd prayed on the way back for something to work out, and I walked down the corridor, and I knocked on her room, and she said, God sent me to help you. Come in and sit down. And I went and sat down, and I shared with this woman about, you know, I was going to these meetings and, you know, kind of fairly manic stuff. She said, I'll pay the rent for 2 weeks, go to your meetings every day. And I never saw her again. And it kind of makes me shiver a bit when I think that my higher power knew how close I was to dying, and saw fit to spare me. And I then threw myself into NA. There was another little miracle. I just share. I mean, I suppose I'm going to get shut up soon because I'm just starting to enjoy talking. I needed money again, and I walked into this guy's office, and he was this kind of accountant guy in the West End, and he was very plush and posh, and I really needed to borrow £50. seems to be a story of my life. I've always needed to borrow £50, even today. But I walked in and it was a big firm, and he was in reception. He said, "Oh, I was just going to phone you." And I said, "Come on, do me a favour." He said, "There's a cheque arrived for you." I said, "What are you talking about? Jay, I haven't had a bank account for 8 years. I was a bankrupt. I had a suspended jail sentence." People don't... He said, "There's a cheque waiting for you. Come up, it's in the office." So I went up there and he said, "Do you remember that account we opened about 10 years ago? You left about £2 in it, where the interest accrues every year, and once a year they send me a statement or send me a cheque. And it's been accruing for 8 years, and there's £52 or something ridiculous like that." Right on the day that I walked in, and I thought, well, do you know what I mean? Something's taking care of me. And I suppose I got a real dose of faith and hope and strength that maybe when if I put down that stuff and I'm willing to try some other stuff, your luck changes. I started to see things, and I got involved. I got involved in service. I was 10 weeks clean, and there was people talking about this World Convention we were going to have in London, and we had to make a bid. And I remember I went to the meeting of the bid committee because I had nothing else to do, and there was only about 6 of us there, and they wanted my opinion because there was only 6 of us, and they were all talking about, well, look, we got to go to Washington, we got to put a bid in to get the World Convention in London next year. And I thought, well, great, we'll do it. And they sent me minutes, and there was my name. Martin said, "Let's go for it." And I felt important. I mean, I felt great. I was kind of mentioned in dispatches. It was... Anyway, cut a long story short, they said, "Well, where should we have it?" And we talked about the venues and said, "Well, Wembley Conference Centre." And they said, "Well, who wants to check it out?" I said, "I'll do it." And here am I 10 weeks clean, and go down to Wembley Conference Centre. I phoned them up, say, "We're thinking of having a World Convention at your establishment. How many people can you hold? 2,000, that'd be fine. Come down and see us." And I got there, and I didn't even have any clothes. This guy gave me some flared denims. I had been out of touch. I didn't know what people wore. And I was a bit embarrassed because even I thought, well, maybe people don't wear this, it was 1985, but they fitted very nicely sort of on the top. It was just at the bottom, they looked a bit odd. I didn't wear those to go to Wembley, but I just thought of that. I remembered that. But I was desperate. And I went to Wembley, and they sent this big reception party, with sort of the managers, the directors, the stuff like that. Took me round the establishment. There were cameras there because the cup final was being held there the next day. And they were trying to do a sales pitch on me, took me on the stage like this, an enormous stage. And I stood on that stage, and I got the vibe, and I knew we were going to get that bid, and I knew I was going to be standing there a year later, and I knew I'd even be able to share that we got the World Convention in London. It all happened in a flash. I mean, it was such a wonderful experience. And so I stayed involved, and I got involved, and I met some people from the States that had kind of a lot of clean time. And what really showed to me about the quality of their recovery, because I was real angry about them coming over here and running our convention. And because I get very defensive and protective of NA, but these guys were and women were really wonderful people. They understood me. They could see what all my stuff was about, and I really saw some quality in people that were involved in service, that worked the steps, that had a sponsor, and I was teachable, and they taught me. I mean, the big thing for me about sponsorship, it was really a lifeline for me. I didn't take to it immediately because, you know, I was very arrogant. Nobody had what I wanted. I mean, I checked out plenty of meetings, couldn't find anybody who had what I wanted. I didn't even know what they meant, find somebody who's got what you want. But fortunately, there was enough people loved me enough to control the whole situation, as goes on quite often in NA, or certainly in my recovery. And they said, there's a guy sharing tonight at Hampstead, step 10 meeting, he's your man, get there. And I went there and I kind of fell in love. I really liked what he had. And he said to me, look, are you willing to go to any lengths? And I said yes. And then he tested me. I had to schlap all over London meeting him and, you know, kind of seeing how willing I was, you know. I do the same sort of thing now. You know, as long as the willingness is there, it was... And he said, I promise you that if you work these steps in the order that they're written with me, not only will you never use a day at a time, but your life will be transformed beyond anything that you could have ever imagined. And that has been my experience. I think that doesn't mean I've got to finish, does it? I mean, so much has happened in my recovery. It's mainly been pain that's made me take action. I was about 14 months clean and procrastinating about a fourth step when a situation happened and I got arrested. The kind of Mr. NA, I thought, go to loads of meetings, do loads of service. I couldn't understand what had happened, and I'd signed these passport forms. You know, someone came in who was sort of Jack the Lad, you know, he was one of the chaps. Do us a favour, can you sign this photo to say you're a company director, that you've known this bloke 3 years? Yeah, sure, no problem. Never seen a guy before in my life. You know, wanted to be one of the boys. He was an international arms dealer. Phoned my solicitor, he says, you're in deep shit. Phoned my sponsor, he said, if you'd have done a fourth step, that had never happened. And I didn't understand what he meant. I thought, that's very helpful, isn't it, at the moment? Anyway, I rallied round and got some of the serious sort of connected NA network of professional people sort of speaking on my behalf, but it was touch and go. They said if you go before this one, you're going to get 6 months. You got form, it's a serious offence. And it was some sort of conspiracy charge. And it was in the magistrate's court that I'd been arrested. I set fire to this court when I was using. The guy I was sharing a cell with was fairly highly strung, and we were remanded there, and he said, "You know what, let's burn it." He said, you got a lighter? I said, yeah. Give him a lighter. Set fire to the thing. They evacuated everything. They opened the cells, flames pouring down the corridor, and we got arrested. But I said, how can we be arrested? I'm on remand. But they sent from the local Rochester Road police station, came and arrested us. Ended up, they recognised me at this Horseferry Road court. The one bloody, well, I mean, I hadn't been in that many police stations. Said, oh, you again? Anyway, thank God I got a fine, and I got motivated to do a fourth step. I would say a fourth step was a turning point of my life. It's possibly the most loving act I've ever done for myself. I did it the same as everybody else, kicked, screamed, and procrastinated, and had to get the right pencil and the right paper and the right... The hardest thing for me was trusting that what all this information was going to do. And what I've kind of learned in NA is that you do first, you understand later. The addict mentality is, I'll understand first, if let me see the deal, then I'll do. In NA, we work it the other way around. Take the action, and the understanding will follow. My understanding is unique. My understanding is, everybody's understanding is unique. But it was a very profound experience for me. The hardest aspect of it for me was to write this sexual inventory, which I left right till the end, and I couldn't have an honest look at my sexuality and my fantasies and all that sort of stuff. But I wrote it down, and you know, I had a good sponsor. He said, "Look, I slept with a man. My sponsor fucked a dog. What, you know? If we haven't done it, I've thought about it." So I did my fourth step and fifth step. It was a very profound experience. And it freed me, and I still reap the benefits each day of that amount of self-knowledge. Because for me, addiction, what I've kind of learned is that if I was thinking the other day about computers. I mean, that they could never make a computer that could think like the human mind. But maybe they could make that, but I don't think they could ever make one think like an addict. I was having tea with my wife this afternoon. I was talking to her. There was a wedding going on downstairs. I was checking out everything. There was a woman on the table next to me. I was kind of listening to what she was saying. I was thinking about what I'm going to share tonight. And I was kind of, you know, it's all in like a millisecond. I was full on aware of what, and until they can make a machine with sort of low self-esteem that you know, kind of can filter "I love you" to "I hate you" by the time it's come out the other end, I don't think we'll have a problem. There's been, I better, you know, get moving, but there's been some, I took a risk. when I was about 4 years clean. I was very much, my sexual behaviour and stuff was pretty much, I had the burglar attitude, get in and get out as quick as you can. Don't let anybody see you. Never in my place, because I could always leave. And I had a bad attitude. I was told I had a bad attitude too. But I took a risk with the only woman I've ever risked with in my life. And because for me, whenever I always had to know that everything, she wanted me, basically. I could never take that risk. But I met a woman in recovery, and I was about 4 years clean, a girl. And I took a risk and said, look, I've bought 2 tickets to the Gambia. I was going through the list of who can I take with me, that I could actually spend a fortnight with and not end up insane. And I really liked this girl. There was something it was an attractive spirit. And I've had a marriage based on friendship, and I'd had a relationship based on sex and lots of other things. But we went to the Gambia, and I had a relationship which was based basically on diarrhea and dysentery. And because it was a big risk because we didn't know what we were doing, but we both really liked each other, and we both got this kind of thing called banjol belly, and and I used to think, well, how can I share a room with a woman? When I want to pray, I like to pray in private, I like to go to the toilet in private. But after this banjol belly, it was a wonderful foundation because really didn't matter after that. It ended up we had a very romantic, and because I didn't know how I felt about her. She didn't fit my stereotype, my stereotype, which was governed by my disease. So I was always aiming for the disaster, and she kind of broke the mold. And there was something, I kept thinking, no, she's very nice, but then my stereotype illness would say, but she's not your type. But I said, yeah, but I started to listen to my heart, and I've started to learn to think with my heart, because there's no lies down here. All the lies and all the deception and all the crap is really between my ears. And anyway, cut a long story short, we kind of, I didn't share I had a girlfriend in a meeting, or I couldn't even say the word girlfriend, but for a year, I sort of, it was very controlled. But anyway, we got married, and I've had some wonderful things happen in recovery, and we flew to Barbados, and my sponsor was best man, and a couple of my sponsees were there, and a couple of friends, and we got married at sunset, and we did our own ceremony, and it was the one thing probably that I said I'd never do in recovery. I just will not get married, and it was fantastic, really. I'm just going to share briefly about when I got to 7 years clean, and I kind of had this fear of some kind of biblical thing that I'd had the 7 good years, and there was some bad stuff waiting around the corner. I remember I went to the men's meeting and shared it, and for me, it started to happen. I've had a very difficult 2 or 3 years. My wife's had various problems with losing babies, and as she was recovering from the last one, my little brother, who I've always adored and was the last member of my family, and he was only 38, said, "Look, Martin," and he called us both up and said, I've got some bad news for you. I've got 6 months to live, the most. I've got lung and liver cancer, and I just kind of, things went, I was there every day, and I watched him die. My wife supported me. There was a lot of beauty in the process of him dying. I saw the beauty, and I felt that the big fear for me was that I wasn't going to be able to survive the feelings. When he finally passed away, I was with him. I held him. I kissed him. And before he died, he said, "Martin, look, you know, forget all this drama, you want to jump out a window and all that." He said, "I've got 2 boys who are going to need you. You got a wife who needs you." He said, "I've had a good life. There's kids in Bosnia losing their parents at very early ages. It's been a random event, and I've been very unlucky." And it's really almost destroyed me. I found it very difficult to go to meetings. I got myself a bit isolated. But my friends rallied round and kind of, they just kept interfering into my life, and just, you know, I got letters and I got phone calls, and somehow, I don't know how I've got through that. I felt that the stuff, I've finally started to let go of it about maybe a month or 2 ago. In the process, I've done a lot of damage financially, doing it my way in business, and I've just kind of let go of that. Lost not all my money, because I never had any, but lost everybody else's money, which, seeing as there's none of those present here tonight, I can sort of, I can mention it lightly. And a couple of months ago, one of my closest friends in NA, who I got clean with, also died of natural causes. He was 10 years clean, and had a heart attack. And it's propelled me to take some action. I've cried a lot. I've never thought about using. Not once have I thought about using. I've prayed that I may survive my feelings, is all that I've done. I felt reconnected back to the fellowship.
For somebody who's been the most irresponsible person that I know, of having responsibility thrown on me from every single angle. I mean, my higher power's got a real good sense of humour, and I welcome all those responsibilities today. The miracle is, they said that my wife wouldn't be able to conceive, and she's 6 months pregnant. And I feel that there is more hope. There's a new life. There was time for me to take stock of the situation, needed to move on. I feel at the moment very teachable, and this week before I came here, it was time for me to move away from my sponsor. After 10 years, that's how it was. It's a big deal for me. I felt a bit disloyal and all that stuff, but I've met a man who I think can really help me. And I'm really looking forward to moving on into a whole new life. I'm very aware of the time now that I've gone on, and I'd like to thank everybody that I know. I said to all the boys that I'll mention their names, but I'm not going to now, it's too late. But I mean, the love and the help that I've had from people has just been astonishing, and all those I don't know, I thank you for helping me in the future, for helping me now, and as my new sponsor just said to me, I mean, and I'll leave it with you now, and I'll let you all get on with your journey, and remember to enjoy the view. Thank you.
Thanks, Martin.